Hi, I'm Anne from Game Like a Mother. I specialize in games that can be played in 20 minutes or less, and this is my top 10 games for a peaceful family game night. Social games also work really well if you just want to have a nice night of playing games where the process of playing is more important than the end result. But I don't have any social games on this list. These are all strategy games. There are no cooperative games on this list because I love cooperative games, but also it's kind of like a team project that you're working on together. And if someone's not doing so hot, people get upset. So there's actually more room for strife in cooperative games than you might think. These are all strategic games that are pretty easy to pick up, but there's no messing with each other. There's minimal interaction where my actions negatively impact somebody else who is playing. And it just seems like that is the recipe for success for just a fun, happy, peaceful family game night. I have all of the games listed in the description of the video down below, along with the timestamps. They're organized kind of from the newer ones that I'm really excited about to our old standbys that are just tried and true favorites. So let's get started. First up, we have Super Mega Lucky Box, which is basically a strategic bingo, and it's by the creator of Sushi Go. So it's pretty simple. It's really easy to pick up. And you just flip over numbers and you decide where you want to cross off that number on one of your little like bingo cards. But then you get bonuses as you close off rows. And they can be things like crossing off other numbers on other bingo cards, or they can be earning lightning bolts that allow you to adjust numbers, or stars that give you more bonus points. And then the one thing, what makes this game great is it's really just you against yourself. The only interaction you have with your fellow players is there's a bonus at the end of the game for whoever gets the most moons, and then there is then you lose points if you're the person who got the least. So that's it. Besides that, it's entirely you on your own. And the gameplay is really fun and really satisfying to work at and try to figure out your strategy to cross everything off. There are rounds where you'll get a number and it'll trigger all these different bonuses. So it just feels really rewarding to play. And it has a good player count of how many players. It can go up to 6 players, which is nice. Easy to pick up, great to play, and everyone's happy. Next up, we have Silver and Gold, which is very similar to Super Mega Lucky Box, but it is a treasure map theme, and instead of numbers, you're filling them in with polyomino or like Tetris-y type shapes, and you're trying to get the most points at the end of the game. And this one's great because, again, they flip over the shapes, you fill them in on your board, and it really is just you against the game. There's some interaction with your fellow competitors where they might beat you to a bonus. You can also collect palm trees. If you cross off a palm tree square, you get points for that based on what's out in the middle of the board. And sometimes if you get a certain number of gold coins, you get a gold coin bonus, and someone can beat you to the gold coin bonus that you're running, but then it just means that when it comes to you, it's worth 1 point less. So it's a pretty minimal hit. And same thing with selecting new cards. Someone might take the treasure map card that you wanted, but there are plenty of others to choose from, and it seems like a pretty minimal hit most of the time. And the gameplay itself is just, again, this is one that's so compact and you can take anywhere with you. It's really easy to teach, really fun, works well for people that play a lot of games and people that don't play that many games. So they're just hits across the board, and the dry erase markers for both this and Super Mega Lucky Box are amazing and work really well on the cards, erase really, really well. And that matters for some of these games because it's such a bummer when you get a game and you're like, oh gosh, the stuff that came with it doesn't work properly. This works great, and the gameplay is perfect and just ideal for a fun, interesting, happy game night. Next, we have Ohanami, which is a game in which you are trying to create the most zen Japanese garden and earn the most points. It's a card game. It's a drafting game, which means everyone starts with 10 cards in their hand. You select 2 to place down, and then you pass the rest over, get your other hand, and you keep on selecting, placing cards down, and passing them around until the cards are gone. And then you score, and you do this 3 times. What makes this game interesting is that different colors of cards score each round. So in the first round, you place down all your cards and only the blue cards score. And then the next round, you still have those same cards down. So you've added on to it. And then second round, the blue and the green cards score. And then again, you take another hand and you add on to it. And then the final round, blue, green, pink, and silver cards all score. So there's a strategy in what colors you're collecting, because at the beginning, the blues are worth way more, but then later on they have a lower value because it's the same amount each time that you're scoring them for. The trick is you have to place the cards in 3 different rows in sequential order. So sometimes you're like, oh, I really want to get this blue card at the beginning because it's going to end up scoring a lot over the course of the game. But is it worth getting it because there's a big gap then in my stack, and so it's going to make it harder to place the cards for later rounds. So it's a really a pretty simple premise when you get the cards and start playing. It's just a deck of cards. That's all there is to it. That's all the setup, which I love. And you just say, okay, grab 2 cards and play them down in front of you, and you're going to have 3 different stacks you're working on. And okay, we're at the end of a round, we're going to score this. So it's very simple and very easy to get up and running. And again, in a 2-player game, yes, there is an opportunity to mess with each other and try to make it more difficult for people to place things down. When I've played this with my husband and it's been 2-player, pretty much my only goal is to try to screw up whatever he's trying to create for his hand. So for 2-player, this is not as peaceful of a game if you play it right. With more people, it's harder to keep track of what's in the hands, and not much of it's going to be left by the time. Like what you start with, you're going to see that hand again when it makes it around to you. But it's especially in a 4-player game with 10 cards, it's not really worth trying to card count and keep track of what everybody has had. So the only real opportunity to mess with somebody in this game, if you're playing more than 2 players, is at the end when you are basically selecting your last 2 cards and you're just passing them 2 cards. So that's what they're going to have to play down. And then that's where somebody can say, oh, ha, 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 if I give them this card, they really don't have a good spot to place it, so it's going to mess up their stacks and make it harder for them for the rest of the game, or they'll just have to discard it. But again, it's a pretty minimal thing to really be able to do to impact somebody else's score. And this is one of those games that my favorite games are the ones that are really, really simple to learn the basics. Yeah, I think of them as simple, elegant games where they just say, okay, the game is this, try to do this. And you can describe it, how to play in a minute. But then the strategy and what you do, it's a little bit different every time. The hand of cards you're getting is a little bit different every time. So it's engaging and fun and interesting, and there is a lot of strategy there, but it's quick to play and it's quick to learn and enjoyable for a group, even if you play a lot of games or not a lot of games. So this is just a slam dunk game on many respects, but especially for this list. Next up, we have Patchwork Doodle, which I can't believe this isn't more of a popular game. I don't hear a lot of people talk about playing Patchwork Doodle, and they should, because first of all, Patchwork is an extremely popular game. The base game, Patchwork, it's a game where you're trying to create a quilt that scores the most points. And this retains that aspect of Patchwork, but it's a couple levels easier. Before you had to do a special selection process to get your patches that you would then place on your board. In this, you roll a die and it ends, and that's what determines which patch everyone gets that they are filling in on their board. So it's very even that way. Everyone starts with a different patch to begin with, but it's 7 squares big. And then after that, everyone is given the same patches, and you're trying to fill in your board as as much as possible and earn the most points. But what makes this special is the doodle, the drawing aspect of it. And if you embrace that, you will really love this game. I am not a good artist, and I don't particularly love drawing. It is not a thing I do for fun. But anytime with my kids, I've sat there and actually done the doodling part of the game. When I first learned, I just would scribble in the shape of the patch on my spot and then move on, like efficient, let's finish this game. But when you kind of sit back and enjoy the process, it really makes it even more fun. And I love that this game, on the box, it says it plays up to 6+, which means, in theory, you could have like 20 people sit and play this at the same time, especially if you had a projector for, okay, it's this shape this time, everybody sat down and drew whatever the next shape was and kind of chatted about what they were drawing, what they did for their patch. It's really fun, and you don't have to be good at it. You make little shapes or designs, or my daughter really enjoyed teasing me about my drawing skills. Apparently I cannot draw a princess, and it somehow looks like a volcano is what, I don't know. It was not very good. I am not an artist. But the game itself is just really fun. It's a good, one of the polyomino Tetris-y-like shapes you're fitting in. There is a good amount of strategy. There are some special abilities that you can use where you can fill in a 1-block shape. There's always a 1 block where you're like, oh, it didn't just fit just right. You have a special power. You can fill that in. You can split a shape in half. You can cut it in half and say, okay, I just want to shave off this side and I'm going to just use this. Or you can have one where you select a different shape than everybody else. You say, ooh, I'd rather do the one to the left of the one that was selected. That would fit perfectly, and I want to use that one instead. So there is still a little bit of strategy, but it's neat to have something that has kind of a sit, chat, doodle aspect. I feel like that's very true to like a quilting patchwork theme that the game is based off of. And then if you get people in on this game, you can move them on to the other patchwork games, which are fabulous, but definitely much more intense and strategy games. But this one, the process is more important than the end result. Even if you don't win, you have a cute quilt you can be proud of at the end of the game. Next, we have Draftosaurus, which is a game where you are trying to place little wooden dinosaur pieces into your zoo for maximum points at the end of the game. Whoever gets the most points wins. It is a drafting game, and everybody starts with a hand of 6 dinosaurs, and you select one, place it in your zoo, and then pass around. And so, and different pens have different requirements for what you're trying to place in there and what their values are. So it's, again, really easy to get up and running. The theme is spot on. This is a game that I would take. I played it with my 5-year-old son, but I would also take it without hesitation to an adult game night. I have taken it to an adult game night, and to have all the adults sit down and not bat an eye that I brought this dinosaur game along. So it's really kind of awesome, the range of people that will play this game. And this game, again, unless you're playing 2-player, if you play 2-player, you're mostly messing with each other, because you get to, you start with your 6 dinosaurs and you select one, and then your next step is you get to take one and you look at what the other person placed and you say, oh, you're collecting that, and you discard one into the box, and then you pass, and you know exactly what each other has, and so it's a little, there's a lot more messing with each other 2-player. That goes away with 3-player and up, and, so for that, you're just taking one, placing it, and the only thing that happens is there's a die that one person gets to, you take turns rolling each turn, and the die makes everybody else have one parameter that they have to take into account when they're placing their dinosaur. So it could say, okay, the left side of the board is off limits because of the die roll, or it has to be on the right side, or it has to be in a pen with no other dinosaurs in it, or it has to be in a pen that doesn't already have a T-Rex in it. So things like that that you have to take into account as you place. But again, it doesn't seem to upset people, because when it's the die doing the thing to you, you're like, oh, I really wanted to place it here, but it's the die. It's not like that person chose to do that to you. So that seems to alleviate some of the the angst or stress over people doing things to each other in the games. And again, and it's pretty flexible. Like even when things are happening, you're like, oh, I don't want to play it here. There are plenty of other pens to place it in. So you probably are still okay, especially if you set things up so that you could be flexible. There's a bit of strategy to that, but it's not anything tricky. My 5-year-old was able to handle it. So a fabulous family game, and one that you want to play over and over again. It's fun and different each time. There's 2 sides of the board. There's a summer and there's a winter side. And the pieces are really sturdy. It's not like some of the card games where you're drafting and after a while they start to get a little bit ragged. They're little wooden dinosaur pieces, so they're gonna stay nice. So this is a fabulous game. This is one that if I was like, oh, this family needs a new family game, this is what I would introduce probably as one of my, especially if it was from kids to adults, because I know it's a happy game to play and it's pretty easy but very interesting. So again, just ticks all the boxes and is a great choice. Next, we have Kingdomino, which is a domino game where instead of numbers on the domino pieces, you have different types of terrain, and you're trying to place them connecting to each other so that your kingdom scores the most points at the end of the game. And this game is great because there's a whole family of Kingdomino games now. There's Dragomino for little kids. We love Dragomino. Queendomino, Kingdomino Duel. They just came out with Kingdomino Origins. So there's a whole world of Kingdomino games to explore once you've tried out this one. And they all have some of the same basic principles. And what you do is you take turns selecting your domino tile, and then you get to place it. And then depending on which order in which you selected yours, that determines the order that you get to select them for the next round. So if you pick one that's worth a lot of points, then you get to select last for the next round. So maybe you don't get as good of a domino. So it's very fair and it's a very unique selection process, but it's really easy to pick up and get going with. And again, it's one of those games where it feels like it's you against yourself, where how do you best orient what the tiles you've selected around your little kingdoms piece in the middle and making it all fit together and getting the crowns, which are what earn you the points. And it doesn't matter as much if someone selects the domino piece that, oh, maybe you wanted that. There are other ones, you just pick one of the other ones, and if you've set up your kingdom correctly, there's a place for it, or you can do something with it. So it doesn't really, it's not as combative, and it doesn't seem like it hampers you as much. We're like, oh gosh, the person just keeps on taking all the best dominoes, and they're the ones that I want. The game kind of evens that out because of the selection process of the dominoes. So really easy, really fun. Just it feels like an instant classic, and it's won a bunch of awards because I'm not the only person who thinks this. And it's a really great game where it feels like one that everybody should have in their cabinet of games because it's just such a standard, and it's always fun to play. It's always fun and a little different and highly satisfying. Next up, we have Bloom, which is the first of a bunch of dice games I have to close out this list. It turns out, just in general, if you're looking for a happy little family game night, dice games might be your go-to. This one, you are trying to fill orders at your flower shop, and you want to get the most points to win the game. You get points by being the first to either have collected all of a particular color of flower, or you get points by filling in a complete flower bed. And what you do is you take turns, someone rolls all the dice, and then you each take turns selecting a die, and then you circle a corresponding number of flowers of the color on the die. So that's it. That's how you play the game. Easy. That's super easy to pick up. And there's some strategy. There are a few, there's like one power you can use where you can re-roll the dice if it gets to you and you're like, oh, this is a hot mess. But in general, it's another one where if somebody takes a die that you wanted, there's a bunch of other dice there, and you have a bunch of different colors of flowers So it really, you just work on something else for a minute. So it doesn't really seem to hamper you too much. It's not like, oh, curses, you just took the one that I really wanted. No, I'm really mad at you, Aunt Rebecca. That's not going to happen to you while playing this game. It's just kind of a mellow, nice game to play. Kids can play with a little bit of help. Thematically, it's very comfortable and nice. So sweet little dice game, super easy to pick up, and it plays well, and I'm always happy to play it again because it's a little bit different. There's variety. When you have a dice game, you have instant variety in how the games run and work, and there's a bunch of different, there's like 5 different cards that have different setups for your little flower shops. So you try to switch that up too. But it's just a pleasant little game, and it's really fun to play, and it's a great choice for a game night. Next up, we have Qwixx, which is a very popular little dice game. We loved ours so much that we ended up laminating the cards because we used them so much and went through them, and that is not an uncommon problem for this game, which is a testament to how good it is. What you were trying to do is you were rolling dice, and you were trying to get the most points by the end of the game. And you get points by marking off boxes on different rows. 2 are from, the numbers are from low to high, and then the other 2, the numbers are from high to low. And you roll the dice, and if you're the person that rolled the dice, you get to pick 2 different numbers to mark, and other people get to choose if they want to mark one of the numbers. And the trick is you have to mark them off in sequential order. If you mark to the right of a number, then you can never go back and mark the numbers behind it anymore. And it's just the number of X's you get in a row determine the points that you get at the end of the game. So pretty simple in general, but there's actually quite a bit of strategy for how you go about it. And a lot of it kind of just depends on the dice that you roll, if you're lucky or if you're not that day, which is great for a game on this list if you're wanting just to have an easier, peaceful game night, because if someone isn't having a good game or isn't going well, it's not the fault of anybody else there at the table. It's the dice. The dice aren't going well for that person. And that seems to really help. If it's not a personal thing, if nobody's out to get you, but just, so even if somebody isn't doing well, if the game isn't going well for somebody, it's the dice that are to blame and not anybody else, and that seems to make it help be just a happy, peaceful thing. But the game is fantastic. Again, everybody should have this game. It's really cheap. It's available everywhere. Just make sure you laminate some cards because you will play it that much. Next, we have Roll For It, which is a dice game in which you are trying to roll your dice. Everybody has their own personal set of dice, and you roll your dice, and then you try to place them in front of different cards with different dice combinations on them. And if you are able to have your dice that you have in front of the card match what's on the card, like there's 2 5s and 2 4s, and you're able to roll that, then you get to collect that card and have the number of points for that card. And you try to get to a certain number of points first, and whoever does that is the winner. I love this game because it requires essentially no explanation. You just start rolling dice. You look at it and you say, oh, there's dice on these cards. I have a handful of dice here. I'm going to roll my dice and try to match them up to the different cards. And there's a few things like you can't move it from card to card. Once it's in front of a card, it's stuck there. But basically it's just so easy to get up and get going. I've played this with my grandma. She likes this game. I play this with my 6-year-old son. He loves this game. I love this game. I'm happy to play this game on my own. So there aren't a lot of games that can fulfill that level of just universal appeal. It's really fun to play. It's pretty quick to play. And again, it's the dice. Sometimes people are super lucky and there's some of the cards that are 6 of the same number and they just get it right away and they're doing great. That always happens with my 6-year-old. He's incredibly lucky. And so you're like, oh gosh, good for you. But it's not like anybody's doing anything to you personally. It's your dice if things go wrong. I never get those cards that have 6 of the same number on it. The dice don't like me. But it's just a really, really fun game, really easy to get out, quick to play, and easy, a good time every time. And finally, we have Yamslam. I love this game. It's like updated Yahtzee, but with poker chips that you collect for collecting different dice combinations, which is instantly very cool, regardless of who you're playing with. And I love this game. You try to get the most points by the end of the game, and on each, it's like Yahtzee. Each time you get to roll 3 times, and then at the end, whatever your combination is, you get to collect a chip that corresponds with, you know, your large straight or your flush or whatever you've gotten. And it moves quicker than Yahtzee. There isn't the scorecard like Yahtzee. You just collect a poker chip and then count them up at the end. And you are always rewarded for getting 5 of a kind, which is in this called a Yamslam, because it's not like in Yahtzee where you have to eventually get to the point where you're crossing out stuff. If you didn't get anything for the round, you have to pick a category to cross off, and you're like, oh, fine, I'll cross off the Yahtzee because I'm probably not going to get it. Then you get it later in the game, and you're so upset because you didn't get the points for it, even though you got it. That doesn't happen in this game. In this game, if you get a Yamslam, you get to collect whatever the highest value poker chip is left, no matter what. So you're always rewarded for that. And then you get an extra turn. So it's very, very nice to get a Yamslam. Again, everybody seems very familiar with Yahtzee and the concept of just rolling dice 3 times and going for different set combinations. And so we used this. We had a robotics competition this past weekend, and we had a bunch of 4th graders there. And this was one of the games we brought, and this was probably the most popular one because we just said, I gave this spiel of like, this is like Yahtzee, roll 3 times and try to get these combinations. They were done. They were good. They had it. So they just rolled, and the version we have has like a felt lined interior to roll the dice into. If you could find that version of the game, highly recommend it. Very nice. And so it's all just self-contained. You open it and it's already set up, which I love. And then you roll it into a quiet thing, which I also really love. And so they were able to manage it and collect the chips. And, you know, people would get more points than the other person. Oh, bummer. Yeah, you beat me. But it's not like, oh, you rolled that on purpose in order to get me. It's just what happened with the dice is what happened with the dice. Oh my gosh, you were so lucky and you got 3 Yamslams. Yeah, of course you won. Let's play again. It's quick. Quick games are also really helpful for a happy time because even if you lose horribly, you're like, okay, well, that was 15 minutes. Let's play again. We've got the time. So Yamslam, fantastic game. Really, really easy, but fun. Fun for everyone. I play a ton of games. I love Yamslam. Happy to play it anytime. So that's it for our top 10 peaceful family games. I hope you found one that you're excited to test out on your own family. And thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time from Game Like a Mother.